everyone, welcome to something new. My name is Josh Rajucci Howard, but today I am not going to be the one who's really talking to you about some of the new stuff. I've recently gotten Gustavo de Sousa, one of the star players over in England, to give a bit of a rundown on his take on Nork, Scions, Scion Command Squad, and Graves as a new update to Doombolt. Originally, we were going to do this as part of the original Foot Scions 1 Dorn variant of the way that we were playing Doombolt, but ever since then, he has updated for some of the new characters, including Graves and Yarrick, even after Yarrick was nerfed. So if this is something you enjoy, hopefully I'll be able to get more players to come on, do some of these guest videos, and help out, especially with some of the stuff that they know way more about than I do. So with that said, let's go ahead and pass it over to Gustavo. Hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, my name is Gustavo. I was challenged by Joshi to make a video on the Foot Scions, and here I am making the video. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a guard player from Portugal. I play for Team Portugal and I play for Team Sigil in the UK. So I'd like to do this video just to break down the unit a little bit, answer some of the questions I've been getting about it, and just help you become better as a guard player. This unit consists of 10 Scions with Nork, Command Squad and Graves. Scions give real wounds, Nork is a beat stick that's very efficient for his points. The Command Squad gives sustains, and Graves gives fallback, shoot and charge. This is a very neat package, and all the components of the unit work quite well together to give you a bunch of stuff. So a lot of people ask, why do I run this unit? Why do I want Scions on foot? I mean, they have deep strike, right? Why would we just have them on foot? So this unit acts as a central anchor for the army. So you have usually the Cadian brick. The Cadian brick is like your brawly type because it can fall back and shoot. It's quite tanky for its points. And honestly, you don't really mind losing it that early. Whereas this is your hammer to combine with the Cadians. So whereas the Cadians go out, absorb some damage, get hit, and then probably die eventually. This brick wants to go out, deliver damage, and take over the game. So if we go over a bit of the main strengths of it, it has very high damage output. So when your opponent is on an objective, is shooting a lot of volley gun, last gun shots, as well as a lot of plasmas with real wounds. So this is a very high damage unit. It also punches incredibly hard because you have 14 damage to attacks in the unit with real wounds if they're on an objective, rolling ones. Plus you have Nork's mortals, you have Nork's dev wounds. It's just a lot of damage, right? It's also a big OC bomb, so you bring the flag in this unit and it's just unbeatable amount of OC, honestly, because as soon as you put it in the middle, no one can move on and actually contest it. It's just a very high amount of OC. Guard as an army lacks a melee unit, which this definitely fills that role. It's not the best melee unit, right? But it's also not nothing. So it can charge 5 Marines, kill them. It can charge 10 Marines, kill most of the squad, stuff like that. So I would like to give a small disclaimer. This unit, I've seen, honestly, people have mixed success with it because I would say it's quite hard to utilize correctly. So this unit costs 350 points. A Rogal Dorn costs 290 points. And for its points, the Rogal Dorn is a lot tankier than this unit, as well as does not lose efficiency as it loses wounds, right? So what does this mean? If you lose 14 models of this unit, or if you take 14 damage on the Rogal Dorn will have a lot more damage than this unit. So it is vulnerable to getting attrition now. However, I will say that once you learn how to utilize it correctly, it's definitely one of the most powerful units in guard due to just being a Swiss army knife. It can literally do anything. It doesn't necessarily do everything well, but it can do anything. And that is, flexibility is extremely powerful. So besides incredible damage output, this unit tends to be, of course, not as tanky as a Dorn because it's not toughness 12, 2 up save, 18 wounds. But it is 3 up save guardsman, and it won't die to, for example, storm bolters. It won't die to intercessor bolters. It won't die to a lot of the usual infantry killing stuff, at least not small amounts of it. It usually requires a very specific answer to get rid of. And then also, after the first 10 Scions die, you get to take the wounds on graves, which means you get to tank with a 4 Philippine. So you always know that your opponent will have to commit at least 2 activations to completely kill them off an objective, or else you might have the command squad alive, or you might have graves on 1 wound and then the command squad alive, right? And then the medic brings back a flag, maybe you hold the objective again, maybe Nork gets to punch again. So it can be a very scammy unit. And although it is not the tankiest unit in the game, it's tanky enough that your opponent has to commit a decent amount to it. The last model you want to remove is usually the medic, which is not really obvious. So you want Nork to be tanking for the medic and the officers to be tanking for Nork, so there's kind of a weird order there. But it means that even if you have just a Nork and medic, you bring back the flag, maybe you bring back a plasma gun, and then they can continue trucking along, skirmishing, killing 5 marines, etc. The usual loadout of this unit is you give the power fist to the commander of the 10 Scion squads, you give them plasma guns and volley guns and the Voxcaster to farm CP. The command squad will take the flag. This is for the OC, and for after the 10 Scions die, you can bring back the flag and the squad will be OC2. The medic, obviously, to bring back models, that's very valuable. The volley gun and the plasma gun to match the squad. And a lot of people ask me, why do I take volley guns instead of meltas? So the volley gun is 30-inch range, with rapid fire being at 15. This unit is not slow, but it's also not super fast. You're moving 9. And the difference between being inside of 12 versus being just on the edge of 15 or being outside of 12 is massive. So I want to minimize this weakness by having the volley gun be longer range. It also answers something that the list can struggle with sometimes. So for example, 20-man bricks of Black Templars, they can be quite hard to deal with if you don't have a massive activation that you just go, okay, I'll go plus on strength, ignore cover, and I know I'm very likely to kill the 20 guys between the Ripper, the Plasmas, and all the volley shots before they get to Blood Surge. So it helps solve a problem there that maybe smaller Scion squads or the 27-man might not do 100% reliably. It also gives us a CP sync in Grizzled. So Grizzled as a detachment is quite interesting because it has 3 damage strats, which is honestly not that common, and this unit just loves all of them, right? Usually I find myself, okay, there's a big target on an objective. You go over the list. The first priority is ignore cover to give AP, if you're not already putting it in an invuln like Zinch Demon or something. Then +1 strength. If it is +1 to wound on most of your guns, it's worth using. And then lethals is the one I use the least because it's usually going on the Cadians, because they are usually doing the killing outside objectives, and you already have wound rerolls. But honestly, if something really needs to die, it's not that uncommon that you just put this unit out and you go 1, 2, 3 CP, 1 gets refunded, right? And you just say, okay, now this problem is dealt with, it's gone. I don't have to worry about it anymore because the Scions have a really, really good chance of just dealing with it. And then the rest of my army can focus on killing the rest of their army, right? Other useful strats in this detachment is Snap 2. So a very common play pattern with this unit is we give it rapid fire and move, move, move. We move 9 to get into position, and then we snap 2 to get +1 to hit. So you're hitting on 2s, rolling 1s, right? This just keeps the unit trucking along with max efficiency, and then in my opponent's turn, I want to be using both take cover and AOC to conserve as many scions as possible, so that maybe they get to activate again, maybe they get to fight again, stuff like that, right? Although the unit can take attrition, you have a lot of las guns, voxcasters, flags that you can kill off before it gets to your special weapons. And if you get to heal and get 3 volley guns, 3 plasma guns, Nork, and a plasma pistol shooting, that's, I wouldn't say 100% of your damage, but maybe 70% of your damage. So it's very useful as a place to keep dumping your CP to kill the opponent faster, as well as a place where you can keep abusing Snap 2, which is one of the best strats in this detachment. That was like the basics of the unit, what it is, what it does, what its role is, but I figure I'd do something a little bit deeper, just not go over the surface level of I read the rules, but also give you a bit of context in how this unit is used. This is the first bullet point, is the key to using this unit. You want to keep it safe, but you always want to pre-measure so that a 9-inch move gets you on the ruin and gets you shooting, or a 9-inch move gets you within rapid fire of something that charges your screen, for example. I'll have some examples later. So you usually want to deploy it bubble wrapped, so it's protected. You want to have it second line, so you have your front line of like engineers, Kazarkin, Chimeras, 10 Krieg, 10 Katachans, horses, whatever. And then this unit is sitting 6-inch bubble wrapped by another unit or multiple units. Is sitting 6 inches from the front of the base of your most forward screen, so that, for example, if they send 5 legionaries to charge your 3 horses, whatever, you can heroic. But if they send a mega death brick, then you don't have to heroic, you can just sit there. It just gives you options. And as I said before, it's very expensive, it's very high damage, and it can take over games once your opponent stops being able to answer infantry efficiently. So you want to keep it alive, safe, but also close enough they can join the action. So I have here some examples. On the left side image, you can see I've deployed the Scions wrapped by engineers so they don't get charged. The other side that they could be engaged is blocked off by Chimera. The other side is blocked off by Krieg and Cadians. This unit is basically untouchable right now. And then after my first movement phase, they have moved forward, and as you can see, I put the Krieg on the middle objective, I put the Cadians second line, and then I put the Scions inside the Cadians. So if my opponent wants to fight me, he has to charge me with 1 unit, pile in, kill the front screen, the second unit piles in, kills the second unit, the third unit piles in. It's just very hard to achieve, right? At some point he'll run out of space for units. And most importantly, we have models of the 27 men and models of the Scion unit mixed together, so that if my opponent charges my Krieg or decides to, if my opponent charges, I can heroic intervention. And then if the opponent is a shooting army, not a melee army, then maybe they can shoot the Krieg, but not much is killing 10 guardsmen with AOC and +1 save reliably. So I'm threatening to res on the objective and score primary, or pull behind the line of sight if he gives too many activations. And then next turn the Scions are in position, so a 9-inch move gets me on the plate, gets me shooting. A 9-inch move on the Cadians gets me on the plate, gets me shooting, and I can deliver my damage, right? Yeah, so this is very basic how to deploy the unit. Just try to keep it close to the front, but not close enough that they'll die. And then after the first few turns, if your opponent hasn't given you a heroic, there has been some attrition. So for example, maybe you have lost half your Kazarkin, a Scion brick, whatever. Your opponent has lost 500 points of his army. So at this point in the game, which is the mid game, your opponent usually has to start playing the game with real units, right? This is when the Scion brick wants to wait his chance and just pounce on some big unit that touches an objective, or even not touching objective, you'll do a lot of damage. But ideally, it's touching an objective, you get to walk out, you get to just blow up that unit. And then in front of that, you want to push out your army so that you kill the thing in front of you, and then you set up screens around it so that maybe you get to activate again. I mean, if your opponent has 60 infantry in his face, right, and the Scions are back there, kind of not on objective, kind of not priority, I would say it's not worth the effort for your opponent to go after them, and they'll just go after your front lines instead. Because if they're not going after your front lines, then you'll be scoring primary, because you'll exist on the circles, the Scions might die, there's not enough bullets for everyone, basically. And usually you can feel that you got good value of it if you get to walk out, shoot something, charge something, can be something big, can be like 5 scouts, whatever, and then hit an overwatch. Usually they've done enough, they put OC on an objective, they've done lots of damage, they forced the opponent to shoot at them, dig through the forward field of pain, that maybe it's not like you're happy it's done its job. And I have here maybe a very simple example of how you want to be pushing. So the unit just comes out to push the crisis suits, maybe not the tankiest unit I could have picked, but you know what I mean, something that walks out into the middle, and then the rest of your army is pushing up in front of it. So this is the Kazakin, the Rapid Ingress Scions, the Cadians, whatever. You know from this position, your opponent's next wave will hit the guys on the objective. You know from this position, if the opponent charges the Cadians, you have a heroic. You know from this position that if the opponent walks on the plate, he's going to hit a nasty overwatch. So just try to play all your units in tandem, and I think it helps to see them as like first line of like your front lines, and then the guys sitting behind it, shooting a bit, not quite fully committed, but also not out of the action. After your opponent's response, so this is when we get into the late game stage of scrapping for points, right? Imagine your opponent put an anti-infantry activation into the Cadians, kill them all completely, you've lost all your Kazakin, maybe you still have the Scions, so this is when they get to fall back and shoot, or move forward, shoot again, charge something else, and by then usually your opponent has run out of stuff, or your opponent has chosen to focus the Scions, in which case it is quite likely that you have the bodyguard squad alive, and then this bodyguard squad just runs around punching things, being OC, maybe do an action. Another strong point of this unit is that because you have these layers of healing, res, the unit becomes toughness 6, the forward field of pain on the officer, combined with that on the Cadians as well, combined with a bunch of transports, Kazakin, Scions left over, Kriegs that are healing still. I find that this army does really well in the later stages of the game, where you're just like scraping for points, fighting your opponent. Your opponent maybe has some trash left, your trash will beat their trash, stuff like that, right? And then I also wanted to give an example of just a heroic. So something to keep in mind is the Krieg, the engineers, and the Cadians are all on 25 mil bases, so this is less than 1 inch, right? So when you heroic into a big screen like the Cadians, you don't necessarily need to base even versus huge melee activations. You can base like 1 model or base 2 models, and then the Cadians will all die in front of you, and then you just get to pile in and hit them, fall back, shoot and charge, shoot them and charge them again, and that's usually enough to finish off the unit. And during all of this time, you've had 40 OC on the objective. So I guess melee armies, this is a play pattern that works very well, and I recommend you trying it. Another very common question is, why would I take this over Rogal Dorn? So Rogal Dorn is cheaper, tankier, it does less damage, it's harder to move. The main reasons we would take this over the Rogal Dorn is, firstly, in the context of the list, you have engineers, Kazarkin, other Scions, and Cadians. This is all infantry, which means you can really push the limit on your opponent's anti-infantry activations, plus you can make all their anti-tank completely useless, right? No one wants to be shooting their last cannons at 4 guys with a 3-up save. I used to bring 1 Dorn, but I found that when I got Graves, when I got Yarrick, I wanted to cut the Dorn because usually I was just giving that target for anti-tank, right? The unit does deal more damage than a Rogal Dorn. When you invest a lot of CP in it, it does do melee damage, which a Rogal Dorn doesn't. It's not vulnerable to getting tagged because you have Graves. It's easier to move because you walk through walls. It's just so perfect in this detachment because the Scions can always just give themselves 2 orders, and you can easily snap 2 to change the orders without dropping guns costs. So yeah, I find it's very... It has different strengths from the Dorn. Not necessarily saying a Dorn is bad, but I feel like this one suits my playstyle and my list much better, and is overall stronger than the Dorn, personally. Another argument I've had is, does this unit work on GW terrain? So I play in the UK and in Europe mainly, and I play on UKTC and WTC terrain. So these are naturally more closed off terrain formats where you have more staging. However, I personally would still bring this unit in grizzled lists in GW terrain because it's just such a problem solver, right? It just deals a crazy amount of damage and gives the army something that it doesn't really have anywhere else, which is a melee unit. After playing on GW, I found it was very good on layouts 1, 7, and 8 mainly, because, as I said, it actually tends to play more like a melee unit that's shooting you from up close than a proper shooting unit that just sits back and shoots, right? If you do play on a very open layout, it is not bad from rapid ingress. So you can rapid ingress this. So for example, layouts 2, 4, and 6, I think. The edges are very uncovered, so you can rapid ingress, overwatch your opponent, and then move forward, shoot, charge, and I'd wager at that point you've gotten a decent use out of it, to be honest. And I do understand if you want to take Rogal Dorns for the long range engagements, but my opinion on that is that if you have a Rogal Dorn or 2 Rogal Dorns fighting against 2 Repulsor Executioners, they're losing that fight. If you're fighting against Pax-bound Defilers, they're losing that fight. If you're fighting against Death Guard Defilers, they're losing that fight. So my opinion is trying to get into a shootout with just a couple of Dorns isn't the way. So I'd rather be the rat, play as a melee army, and just approach the game that way instead. Besides the Foot Scions, we have I put the wrong picture accidentally, oops, but I'll show you after. We have I call it the Yarrick Chimera party. So usually Doombolt lists are taking the Foot Scions and the 20 Scions. So for Yarrick, who just got nerfed, but I still think is quite playable, I want to bring him with 10 Scions. The idea is he starts on the board, orders all your Chimeras, because I've cut the Dorn at this point, so I don't have vehicle orders anymore. Yarrick gives me that again. The Sound Squad has a Voxcaster, and picks Counter Strategist, and then just runs inside the Chimera. After running inside the Chimera, the next turn, it's gonna be in your expansion. He will disembark and kill something near your expansion, and then this is saying, okay, if you move near Yarrick, I get back inside the Chimera. If you don't move near Yarrick, I score primary. Even if you kill all of Yarrick's unit, he'll likely get back up. So I've lost a Sound Squad, and if I ever get to reuse that Sound Squad, his value is he's just paid for himself, right, basically. He also works really well later when he moves into the middle and supports your other sound bricks. So I have some examples. So in this case, for example, the Chimera would have dumped Scion. I forgot to add that picture, but imagine there's Scions in front of the Chimera. They blow up some CSM unit, and now the CSM player moves up to the Chimera. You get to re-embark, because he wants to steal your expansion. He wants to deny your primary, right? What you can do also is you block the back of your own Chimera, and then the guys will have to disembark 6 inches, and you disembark behind them, or you disembark behind your own screen, and you can keep them safe. And this is kind of the setup you're gonna have with Yarrick in your expansion, just playing that. So it's kind of a lose-lose-lose for your opponent. So if he moves close, you get back in. If he blows up the Chimera, you get out 6 behind him, or you get 6 into safety. If he doesn't go, you score primary. If he shoots you, Yarrick gets back up, etc. Late game, after Yarrick gets back up, maybe his unit has gone already, he can help in the push in the middle, so he just advances into the middle when you move your Scions out, and now you're saying, okay, if you try to charge me, I can Phantasm. If you come close to try and auto-see me, I can charge you. Can Blood Surge into you. I get an Overwatch for free, maybe. It just gives you lots of options, right? And yeah, I really recommend you try Yarrick with 10 Scions. Sorry if that was a bit of a messy video. It's my first time making a video like this. If you want to find me, I do coaching, and I'm usually hanging out in Joshi's Discord. You can just drop me a message, drop me some questions. I always tend to answer. And yeah, thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful, and have a good one. See you.